In this video, we are going to talk about one of the chapters in my newest book. The name of the chapter is Answering Complex Interview Questions. Please take note that I am doing this read through while I am editing the chapter. So there might be mistakes. And because there are mistakes, I don't really know what to say. There are mistakes, and that seems to be a normal thing when you are writing something complex. So here goes. I am going to proceed with the read through, and hopefully, you will find some value with what I am doing. And yeah, I look forward to hearing your feedback. And if you'd like the book, just send us a message and we can send you information about the book. Or if you'd like to pre-order while it's still being written, that's perfectly fine as well. So I'm just going to show you this small part of the book, and I hope you have fun. Answering complex interview questions. The interview is a situation where the company meets you to give you an opportunity to present yourself and evaluate whether you are a good person to hire or not. In an interview, you will be asked to use words to talk about your present goals, past experience, and future intentions. You are going to encounter some form of another of the following questions. Tell me something about yourself. What are your strengths and weaknesses? Why do you want to work here? Why should or shouldn't we hire you? How do you intend to contribute to our company? The biggest problem that I see is many job applicants try to answer these questions by giving the biggest problem that I see is many job applicants try to answer these questions by giving the interviewer positive descriptions about themselves. Hire me because I'm dedicated. You should hire me because I'm honest, hardworking, and dedicated, said the applicant. The interviewer scratches her head and asks follow-up questions. Paying attention to the word dedicated, the interviewer asks the applicant to tell a story. Please tell me a situation. Oh, sorry. Please tell me a story about a situation where you had an important family or social gathering. Okay, I'm going to continue with the recording. Um, where did I stop? The interviewer scratches her head and asks follow-up questions. Paying attention to the word dedicated, the interviewer asks the applicant to tell a story. Please tell me a story about a situation where you had an important family or social gathering. like a family dinner or a wedding to attend to, or maybe a situation where you have a friend going abroad and you're going out with your friend one last time to say goodbye. You are about to go to the event when your boss or teacher informs you that you have more work to do at the office or in the school or in school if the applicant has no work experience. The interviewer summarizes. Tell me a story about a situation like tell me a story about a. So this is a little unclear. Tell me a story about a time where you had to choose between. Between work commitment and a personal obligation. The interviewers tell me a story about. Tell me a story about a time where you had to choose between um, a work commitment and a personal obligation. What solutions did you come up with? How did you deal with the situation? What did you do exactly? What happened as a result? The applicant was silent for a couple of minutes. The interviewer ends the applicant. The interview ends and the applicant is asked to reapply after 6 months. So the next section is how not to use Google. What's worse is people ask Google for column break. What's worse is people ask Google to answer these questions and depend on strangers on the internet or some Indian writer for tips. And as a result, they fail miserably. You might not realize this, and I don't blame you because many people don't realize this either. The above five questions are actually 100 different questions summarized and compressed into one incredibly short request for information. I'll say that again. The question, tell me about yourself, is a combination of 50 to 100 different questions compressed into a single request for information. Wait, let me just put back what I put. Okay. Incredibly short statement or question. In fact, most questions that you have difficulty answering are not just one question. There are 100 different questions involved that you need to that you need to ask yourself and consider carefully before you open your mouth in the interview. Fortunately for you, I am helping you prepare for your interview. Most writers just copy information on the internet and pass these things off as their own. Everything you read from this book is a result of my 16 years of job application experience. In the next few lessons, we are going to break down many of the difficult questions and help you come up with a unique, compelling answer that will get the interviewer to fall in love with you and eventually want to hire you. Tell me about yourself, your strengths and weakness, or why should I hire you is very much like asking a person any of the following questions. How do you drive from Paranaque to Quezon City? What's the best place to eat in Japan if I'm eating there for a week? How do I defeat Manny Pacquiao in a fair boxing match? How do I transform myself from an unemployed person with no money in the bank into a self-made multi-millionaire? What is the cure to diabetes? Any of these questions require a long, carefully thought of answer and additional information from the person asking the questions. For example, how do I drive from Paranaque to Quezon City? Where in Paranaque will you be coming from, and where exactly in Quezon City am I going to? In the question, what's the place to eat in Japan if I'm eating there for a week? What kind of Japanese food do you like to eat? Do you have any dietary restrictions? In the question, how do I defeat Manny Pacquiao in a fair boxing match? What is your fitness level and boxing experience? In the question, how do I transform myself from an unemployed person into a self-made millionaire? What is your experience in business and finances? In the question, what's the cure to diabetes? Who are you asking that needs cure for diabetes, and what steps have you tried so far? So, in some way, trying to answer the above questions by searching for a shortcut is very much like inviting disaster. If you give a quick answer without asking any clarifying question, you're telling the interviewer that you didn't really think of an answer. You're telling the interviewer you're probably stupid or lying and pretending to know about something that you do not know about. There is no single answer because the answer requires a conversation that involves a combination of questions, an introduction for context, instructions, and stories. The purpose of the purpose of an interview is for the employer to find out if the applicant is a good person to hire, a person with integrity, someone who keeps his or her word, a person with skills, a person who can do the job, a person who is dependable, a person who is telling the truth, a person who is careful about answering questions he or she doesn't know the answer to, a person who is a good fit for the company, a person who can fit into the company culture, a person who will not give the company problems in the future. The objective of the employer is to discover if you are this right person by asking you all these questions. Many of these questions require asking yourself about your wants, needs, personal goals, personal preference, experience, and more, depending on hacks and tricks from the internet may work short term, but is likely going to hurt you and your career long term. I'm going to give you some of the details. Each interview question requires you to ask yourself several questions to be able to answer effectively. If you ask Kevin, what's the best answer to what's the best way to answer, tell me about yourself, there won't be a good answer because Kevin does not have your personal information. Kevin won't be able to suggest any questions about your strengths and weaknesses either. Oh, sorry. Kevin won't be able to answer any questions about your strengths and weaknesses either. What Kevin will share is his best method for what Kevin will share is his method of discovering the best answers to the usual interview questions. In a lot of situations, you don't need to research the right answers to these questions. Many of these questions are a checklist and can be answered with a yes or no, a single word, or a number. In some situations, you might encounter an unfamiliar word and would need to research the meaning of the word. You only need to ask yourself the answer to these questions and should finish quickly. Sometimes answering one of these questions will help you discover what is missing from your full interview answer. Whenever you encounter this, you can ask yourself for a solution. I often end up writing 5 to 10 different versions of my answer to a question. I then read carefully everything I've written aloud. I make corrections to any grammar errors that I spot. Then I then so I'm making corrections. I then slowly eliminate the bad answers or bad elements to my answer. My objective is to get the best answers. So I break my answers down into many parts. I label each part. I study each part. I look for parts that sounds great. I look for parts that need an upgrade. I look for parts that need to be removed. I recombine my answers and read silently. I read my answers aloud and listen to how my answers sound. If my answers sound good, I'll write the whole version down. If my answers sounds off, I repeat the process until I have an answer that I'm confident using. Finally, I pick the best answers. I imagine that scene in the first Iron Man movie where Robert Downey Jr. is assembling and tinkering the parts of the Iron Man armor. He inspects all the pieces to see how the armor works. He then, so edit, he then finds a small part that gets replaced with a better part. So little by little, Iron Man gets stronger. In the first movie, Iron Man can only fight normal tanks and planes. In the second movie, Iron Man can beat super robots. In Avengers, he fought the God of Thunder himself and won against super strong aliens with advanced weaponry. In the second Avengers, movie film, he beat Ultron, another super robot based on his strongest armor at the start of the movie. In Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, he fought the Mad Titan Thanos. In the first movie, Tony Stark built the Iron Man suit to escape terrorists in a cave. He called the armor Mark 1. In his final movie, Avengers Endgame, the Iron Man armor is called Mark 85. What fascinates me is that Tony Stark built 85 final versions of the Iron Man armor. I'm always doing that Iron Man upgrade process. When I'm working in a call center, I was always working on upgrading my spiels, and scripts. I'm always thinking about the worst case scenario and coming up with a plan to prepare for problems. If I don't have a plan, I ask people smarter than me. I'm always trying to upgrade my communication. I'm adjusting my script. I'm adjusting my habits. I'm trying to improve my life. In many cases, I combine the top best answers and good elements from other answers to form my best answer. If you're reading this and you're thinking that the process I'm suggesting is incredibly tedious, that is true. You are correct. However, the process is also essential. Survive in your career. I'm adjusting my script, I'm adjusting my habits, I'm trying to improve my life. In many cases, I combine the top best answers and good elements from other answers to form my best answer. If you're reading this and you're thinking that the process I'm suggesting is incredibly tedious, you're correct. However, the process of self improvement is also essential to survive in your career. You are required to be prepared for an interview. When what you might not realize is that all this time and effort and ink and paper combined can be converted to cash. After I completed my personal job hunting story and my personal answers to common interview answers, I had peace of mind. Have. I know for a fact that I will never have to worry about being jobless for the rest of my life. I know that if my dream job disappears or my business fails, I have a backup job that can give me a guaranteed minimum income of 20,000 pesos a month. The main reason why many people have difficulty answering interview questions is because it's their first time to come up with an answer to many of those questions. It requires several minutes to think of a good answer, a good follow up question, a good story, or properly compose step by step instructions. If you're going to do that thinking and composing process on your interviews, you'll run out of time and miss the opportunity. The interviewer will just think, time's up, and give your spot to the next person. I'm giving you an opportunity to answer many difficult questions now instead of being surprised in an interview. And you probably already noticed that I ask you many of the same questions in many different ways in order to pull out different versions of your answers. When we're done with the lessons, you need to review. When we're done with this book, you just need to review your answers and pick out the best for your interviews. I'll teach you how. Before I begin the breakdown of the answers, let me tell you in advance that the answers to many of these questions are none of my business. Often, the answers to these questions that I'm about to ask are also none of the business of the interviewer. Legally, it is not appropriate for to ask a person about his personal details like marital status, relationship status, religion, and political beliefs, as well as what they do on their personal time. However, some personal information or stories about myself helps me communicate my strengths. When I'm applying for a new job that requires me to learn and work with a skill that I'm not familiar with, I talk about the story of how I learned to drive a car, learned how to cook, learned martial arts, learned how to compete in sports events, learned how to sell and overcome my fear or rejection or something else. I often start with a failure or weakness, then talk about the story of how I built a strength or a skill. Sometimes I talk about a dating or a personal story to communicate that I am dependable and can be trusted. The questions that I'm about to share are some of the questions that I have used to help myself construct my strongest interview answers. I will share my techniques on how to expand your ideas and give you more options on how to communicate your message and to compress your communicate your message and to compress your um, message to deliver your point effectively. In the same way, I'm using this process to effectively share information about myself. I'll share um, the questions on the next. I'll share more questions on the next lessons. I'm letting you know. So you are prepared with your answers. The questions I'm about to share are some of the questions that I have used to help myself construct my strongest interview answers. I will share my technique on how to expand your ideas to give you more options on how to communicate your message and compress your message to deliver your point effectively. In the same way, I'm using this process to effectively share information about myself. I'll share more questions on the next lessons. I'm letting you know the plan in advance so you are prepared with your answers when I ask you to write more detailed descriptions. What accomplishments are you proud of? If you wrote a list of accomplishments, you'll be able to come up with a solid answer. You'll be able to come up with strong reasons why a company should hire you if you wrote a list of accomplishment. Each accomplishment is a result of a positive trait. Each positive trait is an asset you own that can contribute to your prospective employer. Should the employer decide to hire you, that asset becomes part of their assets. If you have a list of 10 positive traits and 10 accomplishments, you have a list of 10 reasons why an employer should hire you. Each positive trait is a result of a story of you overcoming a weakness or disadvantage. We lose our interest when people begin to brag about their positive traits. Nobody's interested when they say, I've been good at drawing comic book characters all my life. I've been drawing ever since I was young because I'm good at it. Now that I'm older, I'm still great at drawing. So, yeah, I've gotten better with practice. There's a proper art to talking about your positive traits. Not knowing how to discuss your positive traits can lead to awkward conversations with your potential employer. You should hire me because I'm a hardworking employee. I heard an applicant tell the interview once. Tell me a story about your typical workday. Can you share examples of tasks that you have done for your employer outside of your list of responsibilities? Tell me a story about the time when you were working on a deadline. Tell me a story about the time when you had to prioritize your work commitment over a personal appointment. Tell me a story about the most difficult task or project that you did for your previous employer. How do you deal with your stress at work? What's the primary cause of your stress at work? I heard the interviewer tell the applicant, we'll call you after the applicant froze and was unable to provide a decent answer. At first, I was thinking that the applicant is lazy and copied answers on the internet. When I got older, I realized that the applicant may be telling the truth, but the stories they had about these events were in Filipino. It takes forever to translate a story from English to Filipino if you do everything mentally. It may require a minimum of 30 minutes to an hour if you use paper or a computer. Unfortunately, interviewers only give you 20 seconds to answer. If you don't answer, they ask the next question. If you fail to answer enough interview questions and your resume if you fail to answer enough questions if you fail to answer enough interview questions, your resume goes to the trash can or becomes scratch paper. Lists help you write great introductions. A list about your accomplishments and positive traits can help you come up with interesting facts to share about yourself. Here's my intro. I'm Kevin. I live in Parañaque. I previously worked in sales. I spend my free time writing about my personal development and travel experiences. People I know describe me as someone who's sociable and helpful. I selected traits about myself that's work related. I mix my personal activities that's potentially useful at work. So I'm just gonna stop here. I have more stuff to read, but yeah, I'd like to just continue silently from this point on. I'll have more sessions like these in future videos. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me while I edit my book for another 30-minute session. And if you like these kinds of videos, let me know in the comments and please subscribe so you'll be and yeah, hit the bell notification button so you'll be notified every time I have a new video like this. And thanks so much for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.